Thanks for joining us for the litter and illegal dumping stream. Each speaker has a total of 20 minutes. After the final speaker, I'll be asking for questions from the online audience and from the floor. You can also post questions in the conference app by going to the session in the program and selecting live Q&A. So our first speaker today is Samuel Lawson. Samuel has over 7 years of experience delivering impactful resource recovery solutions. He has authored high-profile projects such as the State Waste Infrastructure Plan for Western Australia and Container Deposit Scheme protocols in Victoria, enabling effective and sustainable waste management practices. Sam's expertise lies in regulatory compliance, litter reduction and illegal dumping prevention. Sam has developed innovative waste management strategies and training frameworks. His work drives regulatory compliance, advances sustainability and promotes efficient long-term solutions for complex waste challenges. Outside of work, Sam's activities include running, scuba diving, woodwork, growing garlic and raising sheep in the Central Highlands of Victoria. And I think he has a newborn, is that correct? 1.5. So how he gets that all in, I don't know, but he does. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Lawson.
I didn't write that introduction, by the way. Thank you for coming along. This is actually my favourite session of the conference each time I come, because this is the room of people who are really committed. Last session, last day, this is all the litter and illegal dumping nerds. So hopefully I do you justice. So I'm here to talk about curbside hard waste, and it comes about as, I guess, a bit of personal growth. I used to be a person who was 100% you need curbside hard waste, otherwise you'll have horrific illegal dumping problems. And I still think that, but I've opened my eyes to some other views that I've heard from different council staff members over the last 2 years or so. So I'm going to talk to you today about the 23-24 Illegal Waste Survey. We've been running that since 2018, and I present it each year. Give you a quick summary of that so that we keep in the loop. Hopefully it gives you some strategic insights. And then I'm going to move on to using that data to explore curbside hard waste. No heckling. It's an exploration. I'm not coming to any conclusions. Maybe someone here will have another opinion. I'd love to hear it. Before we jump into an acknowledgement of country, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country we work on throughout Australia. Elders, we pay respects to their elders past and present and acknowledge emerging leaders. For those who don't know, so I spend most of my time as a senior consultant in resource recovery. I work for a company called RMCG. I also spend a fair bit of my time as Managing Director of the Waste Enforcement Association in Australia. And that association conducts an annual illegal waste survey. We talk to councils, mostly coordinators and litter enforcement officers, about the challenges, the way they respond, education, infrastructure, incidents, enforcement, collection, disposal, all those things relating to illegal waste. This is the 23-24 snapshot. We've been running since 18 now. We go about it by interviewing appropriate people in council and then also getting some follow-up data from them. This year, with a few of them, we've tried to provide some benchmarking data as a bit of an incentive to continue participating. We make it as easy as possible, but it's still a big process for everyone. So we started off in Victoria only, and we actually used to have more councils in Victoria responding to the survey. We have a similar amount, but the sort of distribution across states has increased, which I'm happy to see. So we've had 76 councils respond that year. And some of the metrics we've stopped showing, we used to show total cost of illegal dumping for all the councils. But as we get more and more councils responding, it's not actually a useful metric. So we're going to move forward using incidents per 1,000 people and cost per incident that is being reported. So this year we saw a slight increase, a 4% increase in the incidents per 1,000 people, and an 8% increase in the cost per incident. This is a bit of a qualitative summary of what the council officers have reported to us. So this is really from authorised officers, the people out in the field responding to incidents of illegal waste. So some of the top ongoing challenges that they face: lack of time, illegal disposal from waste collection or commercial operators, transient populations, obtaining evidence, and regional surveillance. So some of those have been consistent for the entire time that we've run this survey, particularly the lack of time. The emerging one here is commercial waste. So more councils are seeing commercial scale dumping. The circuit breakers identified, this is what staff or investigators think, you know, if you could solve one problem that would just make their job a lot easier, what is it? Reducing the misuse of council services is number one, and it has been for the whole time of this survey. So when we say misuse of council services, we're talking about someone who is intending to participate in curbside hard rubbish, but not doing it quite right. Either they didn't book, or they've added to someone else's pile. From a community perspective, they're still trying to participate in the system, they're just not doing it quite right, and so we're classifying it as illegal dumping. Educating commercial and building site management on proper disposal and documentation requirements in particular. That's emerged because they're seeing so much additional commercial dumping. Ability to enforce an organisational policy, processes and structure, that's been there as well for 3 years. So that's officers coming up against the fact that they don't have training, they don't have policies and procedures that show them what they should be doing as they're conducting their investigations. We've already touched on emerging trends, I've spoken about it. Offender profiles, this is just, I guess, a qualitative, anecdotal experience from authorised officers on who the typical people who are dumping in the areas are. So it's renters moving, again, tying back to transient population, building site operators, rogue rubbish collectors, households. So the survey goes into these 4 areas. I'm going to fly through this bit. What we do is we present the number of staff who are working in that area on activities related to litter and illegal dumping. So we note across Australia there is a difference in the way that we categorise and handle litter and illegal dumping. For this presentation, we're just calling it illegal waste. So we're going to talk about the number of staff who are working on anything to do with that, but we also take into account that a lot of officers work on different things, not spending their whole time on that. So we actually try to estimate a full-time equivalent across those people. And then we present a cost per annum, which is, salary costs plus some operational costs if they can be quantified. A lot of councils can't. All right, I didn't know that animation was there. So, in education, 3 staff working on education. In recent years, we have seen education and communication activities broadly increase. And anecdotally, officers say that's because of the increase in community complaints with the large-scale dumping. And we've also seen councils take a more coordinated or integrated approach to education. So seeking to connect their authorised officers and their education or engagement officers, perhaps using delegations to actually empower their education officers to collect information while they're out doing engagement. And so I think that's a function, or that's a reason why we've seen the total number of staff go down a little bit. They're spending more time though. So the roles have sort of consolidated. Less people, but as a whole, they're spending more time. And then the circle on the outside, I won't go through it. That ranks on average how closely the education staff are working with other teams in councils. So they might not align with the teams in your council, but generally that's who they're working the closest with, and gives you an indication of the potential siloing that we see. The key thing is that still education and local laws or authorised officers can be quite separated in councils. Infrastructure and services. So more staff working in this area, especially since we first started the survey. We've seen, while it's rare, we have seen roles created specifically for surveillance, which is very exciting to see. We've seen 80% of councils partner to deliver infrastructure or services. Excuse me. So when we say that, we're talking about things like charity days, drop-off bins, that sort of thing. A mechanism for their residents to dispose of goods legally that's not necessarily provided by the council. Surveillance use has been pretty consistent, although we are seeing some councils opt to spend more on surveillance. So the average number in the last couple of years was around the $60,000 to $70,000 per annum. We've put a range there now, indicating that some councils are spending more. Most effective, I'll point out that this is the anecdotal opinion of authorised officers. The most effective infrastructure or service to prevent illegal dumping is a hard waste collection service. We're going to explore that a bit more later. Oh, the timer's just started working. I've got 5 minutes. Okay. Enforcement staff. Pretty steady. 5 staff working on enforcement, but they're spending more time. 1.8 full-time equivalent at a cost of $560,000 per annum. In the report for this, we do trend over the full-time scale, but I would note that that's approximately 3 times the amount of time than officers were spending when we first started collecting this data. So we're seeing a trend of enforcement staff actually spending more time on investigation. Incidents went up slightly. We like to separate the resolution, so whether the incidents were removed by the offender or the council. We do that because having the offender remove it is the best outcome really for council. It's the best way to save money. So taking an educational enforcement approach and having the offender remove the material can certainly be better on a cost-benefit analysis than having council clean up and issue an infringement. The average council on the right-hand side, you'll see that they're issuing 120 infringements and 3 incidents are referred to the magistrate's court. Any authorised officers in the room or people who know about the number of infringements that their councils are issuing? How many? Similar? Anyone else? Nowhere near as many. Yeah. About 3 times that. That's exactly right. So what we see is a huge disparity. There's some councils who do almost none, and there's some who have officers that are issuing mind-boggling numbers of infringements. I don't know what they do with their time. Come back, have a look at this. I'm going to skip over it. Collection and disposal. So 5 staff working on collection and disposal. The amount of time they spend on that has gone up, 1.8 full-time equivalents now. That's almost tripled in 3 years, the amount of time that staff are spending. And that's the first time the cost has ever gone over $3 million as the average spend for council on collection and disposal. Okay, so summary, incident per capita up, cost per incident up. We're seeing increased prosecution and investigation, continued education, importantly, a shift to illegal waste disposal from commercial operators. And now I'm going to get into the bit where you're not allowed to heckle. So there'll be lots of questions on this, I'm sure. When we go through this, councils always talk about curbside hard rubbish, right? We know that authorised officers think that it stops illegal dumping. But we've had other council officers start to question whether the system is enabling resource recovery or whether it's enabling consumption and whether it's truly preventing illegal dumping. So I've put up here, I guess, some insights on what hard waste is to different people who are exposed to it. And you'll see it's different to a lot of different stakeholders. It's not just a simple service. For some people, it's a way that they get the furniture for their house. It's an equitability issue. What is hard waste? From the councils that were able to provide us data, we see there the sort of top 5 are furniture, residual, should not be in there. I'll go to the next slide. So furniture, residual, which shouldn't be in there, organics, e-waste, mattresses, and 72% of those markets, of those materials have a market or have interest. Like, for example, the e-waste items have schemes with some of the charities for repair and reuse. So if we're really, really optimistic, that's what resource recovery of hard waste could look like. But an optimistic view is not realistic. If we take into account weather and the amount of time that it is out there, a lot of the material is no longer appropriate. You see that its option for resource recovery moves down the hierarchy. And those materials that are at most risk, moving from recoverable to not recoverable, are textiles, appliances, furniture, mattresses, and e-waste. So we had a look at the different service models. Everyone here knows them. And looked at the different key metrics. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I would point out is that the participation rate between scheduled and booked varies a fair bit, and that the community or diversion rate is highest for drop-off. So have a look at this in detail in your own time, but essentially why we see a difference between booked versus scheduled hard waste, we think is because of visual cues that encourage participation, and that there's no booking barrier, and known dates and communication from councils allow planning. So you see a higher participation rate in a scheduled service. On resource recovery, where are my dots? There's so many. Okay, there are my dots. On resource recovery, we see the most resource recovery on drop-off, and that's simply because things are being source separated when they're dropped off and they're being dealt with straight away. On illegal dumping incidents, I wish I had an answer for you, but I don't, because a lot of councils are using a mixed model, so it's very hard to tell which one is impacting, reducing, or increasing illegal dumping. But one thing I did want to point out to you quickly is that community value that we saw, both from councils but also through research that I can make available to you. Residents think that hard rubbish is important. It varies by population or by demographics, but overall, 45% of people are willing to pay more for a better hard rubbish system or for more service. And currently, we have a view that misuse of council services is illegal dumping and it presents safety risks and visual amenity issues, liability concerns, and that we should stop it. The top three are valid concerns, but the reality is that what we saw, 83% of piles are scavenged, or what we call community resource recovery. And for some systems, like scheduled systems, that is actually the primary mechanism for resource recovery. Without the community scavenging, a lot of that material would be damaged and disposed of. So maybe we should think about managing it rather than fighting it, legitimizing it, setting clear guidelines, managing people who do actually do these pickups, or even engaging with charities, etc. That's my key message that I want you to ask questions about and have a chat about. And then I won't go through these, have a look at them in your own time, but these are factors you can consider when you're trying to design your own hard rubbish system. Factors that we've seen work for other councils. That's it. Thank you.
Our next presenter, Rupert Saville, currently works as a manager of programs at the New South Wales EPA, working across the New South Wales litter and illegal dumping programs. He has been leading the delivery of New South Wales litter prevention strategy for over 9 years, which has helped reduce litter in New South Wales by over 50%. Rupert has over 20 years' experience working across local, state and federal government and the community sector on a range of community and sustainability behaviour change programs. Rupert is passionate about program development through using innovative research methods to understand problems, identify target audiences, and design interventions that drive lasting behaviour change. Since having 3 kids, Rupert has lost all connection with the real world, let alone finding time for hobbies. He does have distant memories of travelling the world, skiing, and planning for a career beyond litter prevention. But 3 kids have managed to keep his dreams in check, and how he continues the good fight against litter. Ladies and gentlemen, Rupert Saville.
It's very true. Kids are dream killers. I'll start with a little bit of scenario first, and sorry, Ron, I'll use you as an example. But imagine you're walking in the street and you see Ron hoeing into his Mars bar. He finishes it and he chucks a wrapper on the ground, and you go up to Ron and you say, "Listen here, Ron, did you know that wrapper, it might find its way into the gutter, and if there's a rain event, it'll go into the stormwater system, it'll flow through the stormwater system, it'll go out into the estuaries, it might make its way out into the ocean. Over a couple of years, it'll start breaking down into microplastics. A fish might come along and the fish will eat that microplastic. And then a fisherman might come along one day and he'll throw his line in and he'll catch that fish. He'll harvest it, he'll take it to the fish market. Fish and chip shop come along and they'll collect it and they'll bundle it up into fish and chips. And when you go back and get your fish and chips and you eat that fish, you'll ingest some microplastic and it'll end up in your gut. It'll cause all sorts of problems and it'll be a terrible thing. Well, Ron will probably, by after 7 seconds, he's probably tuned out, especially if he's got his phone on him. He's probably distracted by something else. And then he'll start making all his excuses. Well, that's not relevant to him. He's like, I don't even like fish. I don't live near the waterways. That's 10 years down the track. All these little things that will start sort of disassociate himself from the impact of the problem. But all too often, that's the way we communicate with people. We want to tell them the whole story. We want to talk about the impact. and we want to explain all this information that we have, and we think, we tell Ron all this, he's going to clearly understand and improve his ways and not litter that packet that wrapper anymore. And what I want to talk to you today is really how we identify who we need to talk to and how, so we don't make those mistakes of trying to tell everything and really make sure our messages really target. And I'll use the example of what we've done with the new the new TOSA campaign to explain how we've gone through that process. So I'll start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet and recognise their special contribution to keeping this country clean. I do want to take you on a little bit of a journey before we get to the fun stuff to explain what our litter prevention strategy is and what we do. Some of the slides you may have already seen, so I apologise if you've seen some of that. Talk a little bit about what the campaign does, and then really lean into what the reason or the rationale for this presentation is about the research that we've done and the direction we're taking in the new campaign. Essentially, we've been out of market for the TOSA campaign for a couple of years, and we're due to launch it at the end of the year. And so I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek on what that looks like as well. So, just for context, the litter prevention strategy. A lot of you will be familiar with this. It's a very busy slide, but it helps paint a picture of how our strategy works. If you focus on the circles there, you think about how litter essentially travels through the environment. It's produced, it's supplied, it's then sold, people buy it, they use it, they ideally dispose it in the bin, but quite often they'll litter it. It ends up in a hotspot, usually 5 minutes down the road from McDonald's, and then it flows down into the wider environment. And then we find Ron's Mars bar wrapper in the ocean. 80% of what we find is coming from land. It's predominantly consumable items. And so when we think about that journey, what we have is an opportunity for our strategy, if you look at those rectangles, to intervene along that journey. Up here we've got source control, so think about the phase outs of things like plastics, like straws. That's obviously the most effective option, phase it out. Unfortunately, we can't ban everything. we can't do that for everything, but we've done it with straws, and we've seen a 90% reduction in plastic litter, which is fantastic. I'm not going to go through all of this, but different elements we've got along that journey that we intervene. If we look at number 3, is where our education strategy comes in, so TOSA campaign and a lot of engagement. That's where we focus, very much at that point of disposal. And then we have a whole range of metrics along the bottom that understand how litter is moving through, what are the impacts, and where we need to lean into our strategy. I'm not going to go into all of that, but that sort of gives you context to what we do in our strategy. That I've got wraps up into those 7 approaches. This is our sort of strategy in a page, and essentially what we're working towards in New South Wales is these 2 key targets: to reduce plastic litter by 30% by 2025, and the big one is to reduce all litter by 60%, litter items 60% by 2030. So that's what we're working towards, and that is above and beyond the 40% reduction that we achieved under the last strategy at 2020. So we've already reduced it by 40% from 2014 thereabouts to 2020, and now we've set these new targets. Again, just to sort of give you confidence in the process that we take. So we did a lot of modelling to understand how we would get there. I'm not going to go into all of this, but when we started the new strategy, we saw if we could just continue the programs as we've always been doing for the last 10 years, the BAU, we'd get to about 26% reduction through grants, through campaigns, etc. But then if you add on the plastic bans, that takes about 20% out, and then a whole range of other programs. Critically for this presentation, which I want to talk to, is the role of the campaign that we use. That's part of our BAU here. It's 10%. And so the TOSA campaign essentially the job it has to do from all our modelling, and the target development we've done, the TOSA campaign has to get us about 10% litter reduction. So everything that we've designed and what I'll talk about now is premised on that 10% reduction of what the campaign needs to do. Just briefly, how we're tracking. The story is good. From our baseline year in 2018-19, we've reduced all litter by about 50%. This will go up and down, so the story is good. We have confidence in that the system is working. And so now, with that overview of the strategy, I'll just dig into what the campaign is, the TOSA campaign. So a bit of an overview. Again, thinking about that journey, this is where we're focused on very much. We have what's called a follow the litter strategy, understanding through our data what people are buying, how they're consuming it, and how they're disposing it. So really drilling down into this part of the journey. For context, the TOSA campaign has been around in many forms from about 2014 and has evolved over time as we've learnt more and done more research. Started back in Hey TOSA there, big awareness campaign. The current campaign in the middle there is focused on calling out the excuses that people use, and then it's had another number of iterations. The TOSA campaign is not just an advertising campaign, it has a broad ecosystem. We have activations, we have websites, social media, and we integrate it so you see it at the local level through our grant programs, and it's available for anyone to use. You can use the assets are all available online, but you see it on bins, on bus stops, and the more people use it, the more we can integrate it, you get that big community recall, and it's one of the most recalled New South Wales government campaigns. That's the ecosystem. Again, I'm just laying the scene for what is I really want to talk about, which is this research. How are we going for time? So about 2 years ago, when we had the last campaign, research showed that it was starting to wear out a bit. With any campaign, if it's around for too long, it just becomes part of the wallpaper and people sort of move past it. So we had used the opportunity to undertake what's been really quite detailed research piece to understand who we need to talk to and how we need to talk to them. What came up during this process is we really identified two types of litterers. And again, this kind of research is applicable to probably problems beyond litter. You could probably find similar things. It'll have relevancy to dumping and other types of non-compliance. But there were the people we call that are aware litterers. They knew what they were doing, they admitted it. And there were those really tricky ones to the right-hand side who we call the passive litterers, that they were heavy litterers, but they didn't believe they were litterers. We had this great quote from a focus group. Someone says, I'm not a litterer, I only do it sometimes, which is brilliant. But there was these really distinct groups. So we were thinking, where do we go here? Obviously, you have very different conversations with an aware litterer. You can talk about the impacts of their behaviour. You can't talk about the impact of littering behaviour to a passive litterer because it's not relevant to them because they're not part of the problem. So this started on our journey of research. Keeping in mind, we were thinking, how are we going to get to that 10% that we need the campaign to do? So we set around been about 2 years of research where we started with a problem, looking at our core litter items that we were finding in our waterways and on the ground. What were they? Then we started looking at who were the litterers, and we did what we called the BMR process, understanding what are the behaviours of these litterers, what's their mindsets, what's the psychographics, how are they feeling, learning heaps about them, and then diving deeper into those core item litterers. Where do they live? Who do they talk to? What are they searching for in their incognito mode on their phone? Which we can find out the information. Who do they speak to? What do they read? Absolutely everything about them. Just when we thought we'd learnt enough about them, we went even further and dig down, and we talked to them and we ran experiments with them. We did funny little experiments where we'd get them on board and we'd show them some images and we'd give them some messaging, and then we'd leave them alone and they go on with their life for another 3 months, and we'd get back to them and test them. What did you remember about what we said? Some of them had completely forgot, but some of the message stuck with people, and we checked on their behaviour. So really live examples from our target audience, understanding what was working and what wasn't. Through all this process then, we've been able to segment the population in New South Wales. So that top line you can see on the left, 31% of the population, roughly litters. When you break that down in that middle line, you see there's different types of littering behaviour. On the left, you've got your real badass litterers that litter multiple times a day, and then those that litter once a day, once weekly, monthly, and then those people that sort of litter every so often, sort of once less than a month. Over on this side, 1.9% of the population litters more than once a day. They're contributing about 44% of the problem. But really down the bottom too, the other thing we started looking at, which I'll come to in more detail, is their resistance to change. So this group, really interesting group, they're kind of like your your anti-vaxxers, your incels, they don't want the government telling them what to do, they're sick of being told what to do. So very high resistance to change in government messaging. As you move down here, you have a group that still contribute a significant proportion, 38%, more open to change, and this other group here. And what we started to see with this group that we've highlighted in red, slightly different, but they had similar psychographics, still contributed a lot to the problem, but more open to change. They cared about the impacts of litter, and we could have conversations with them, and we could see changes over time. So we saw this group as a really interesting segment that we could drill into further, and we knew if we could target that group, we could reach that 10% target that we were trying to hit. So we drilled into that group and basically started to profile and set a profile of the type of litter we needed to target. You can see there, this is the target audience that we're focused, younger males, predominantly in Sydney. They have similar psychographics, moody, they're self-serving, they're disorganised. Some of the reasons why they litter too are similar. They think small items don't matter, and really critical, they lack a connection between their actions and consequences. Interestingly, this group, they do care about the impact on the environment. They care about turtles with plastic straws up their nose. They just don't think they're part of the problem. And so that became the brief for the new strategy, which we needed to really get these people to think before they tossed. We needed to get them to halt the habitual behaviour by reflecting the impact of every single littering choice. It's a long time to get here, but it's been a process where we've really synthesised everything down into this strategy. And then, super busy slide, which I won't get you to read. I usually love when presenters put up a slide and they tell you don't need to read it, don't worry. But you fall in love with slides, and I can't help myself, I'm sorry. But basically, this is 2 years of research synthesised into everything, which outlines what are we trying to do, what's the role of the campaign, what's the problem, who are the people we need to target, and how we're going to get to target them. So really synthesising, really crystally clear from a process, data-led process about how we need to tackle this problem and who we need to talk to. And the important thing in going through this process, and this is the slide I'd like you to take in rather than the last one, what that's meant in 10 years of this process of the campaign is that we've started off in 2014 with the Hey Tosser campaign, talking to 3.6 million people. And now we're focusing through this process of narrowing our target audience down through understanding and grouping of behaviour and mindsets and resistance to change to a target audience of about 500,000, which is really quite a considerable shift. It means that our messaging can be much more targeted to that group. Advertising budgets, which aren't cheap, can be much more effective and efficient in reaching these people. And it means we're not having a broad message that that's talking to lots of different people with lots of different approaches and behaviours and mindsets and active litterers and passive litterers and all the rest of it. We're talking to a very targeted audience, and we know by talking to that audience that we still can reach that 10% and reach our overarching goal to reduce litter by 60%. So really narrowing our focus. That's the fun stuff. Basically, from that, we have gone through a process now of opening up the research. We've gone through a tender process. We have selected an agency. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, other than to say, because we know who these audience are, we've been able to test the proposed solutions, the concepts with our target audience, and there was a clear winner out of that, which has informed the direction we've gone, and we've seen that it's resonated and had impact with that group. So when you see the new campaign and it doesn't resonate with you, that's because you're not part of that 523,000 people. And so that really leads us to, this is sort of the concept we are going with. You're getting an extra sneak preview. Don't share this. This is not being recorded, is it, this session? And displayed to millions of people? Yeah, it is. Okay. Well, don't forget about it. We've still got a way to go. We're going to consult with stakeholders, with our grantees, with councils, who we all want you to use this asset. We want councils to use it. It's much more effective if we're all talking with the same voice. We're going to finalise new campaign and creative assets off that process. This will be tweaked. This is just the initial concept. But again, this is what resonated really strongly with our target audience. There'll be iterations of this. And then we will be launching a new campaign towards the end of the year in November 2025. So that's kind of it. I guess the message really is one, I kind of want to give you all confidence, you as taxpayers, if you will, take off your job as your day jobs and to know that there's a lot of research, there's a lot of strategic thought that has gone into the development of this new campaign. It's really targeted. It's been tested with our audience. To councils, I want you to be partners with us in using it. I really do. I hope you use it. And the other messaging is, I think these lessons apply to any kind of communications or campaign development. Really spending that time up front to be super strategic in what your messaging needs to do, and being really clear on who you need to talk to and how. We have so much more confidence in going forward with this campaign because of that process that we've done, the testing we have done. It's not based on what I like. As an aside, it was really interesting sitting on the panel. No, I'm not going to tell that story because I'm conscious now this is being recorded. I'm not going to tell that story. But it's really, we have a lot of confidence in this new campaign strategy in going forward. And I'm going to shut up. I'm done. Thanks.
Children. Okay. Our next speaker, Charlotte Weaver, is the Sustainability Officer at Hawkesbury City Council. She has worked at Council for the last 10 years, with the last 3 years as Sustainability Officer, which sits within the Strategic Planning branch and Resource Recovery branch. Charlotte is passionate about ensuring cross-council collaboration on programs and projects so that sustainability and waste education isn't just achieved through one section of council, but rather as a whole of organisational approach. And the rest of it you can read on the thing. But Charlotte's hobbies outside work include hiking, rock climbing, abseiling, travelling and art. Last year, Charlotte travelled to Europe twice, visiting the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium and France and Italy, with plans to go back next year. She is an amateur gardener, quote, "I don't know what I'm doing, but I love doing it." And Charlotte has slowly transformed her backyard from lawn to native garden. Charlotte loves cycling, not like the professionals with Lycra, but to get from A to B and around the Hawkesbury. Her grandparents, Omar and Opar, were from the Netherlands, so cycling and not wasting was part of her upbringing. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte Weaver.
Thank you, everyone, and it's my pleasure to be here today representing Hawkesbury to talk through our litter prevention program that we've done over the last few years. Thanks for the introduction, Ron. I've actually been at council for over 11 years, but when I submitted my abstract, I just forgot how long it had been. It's great to follow on from Rupert from the EPA, because our program was largely supported through the New South Wales EPA litter prevention grants, both the development of the strategic documents, but also we've received more funding to implement them. And I don't think the program would be the success without that support, but also the support from all the research that you've just spoken through as well. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the lands that we're on today of the Gumbaga people, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any traditional owners and Aboriginal people here today. I was actually fortunate enough to come up a day early and do a hike through the Dorrigo National Park, and just appreciate the nature of this country, and it was really beautiful to be able to do that. I'd also like to extend my respect to the traditional custodians of the Hawkesbury, because that's the lands that this is done on, and that's the Darug and Darkinjung people. And I'm really thankful to be able to work on the land that's been cared for thousands of generations before me. For those of you who haven't visited the Hawkesbury before, we have a population of 67,000 residents across an area of 2,800 kilometres square. And so that's actually quite a large area for a small population. It makes us the largest area in metropolitan New South Wales for an LGA. We have a mix of rural and urban communities, with majority of our households being in single detached dwellings. We also have experienced a large amount of natural disasters over the last few years. In 2019 to 2020, we had a catastrophic bushfire season, and that was then followed by 8 consecutive floods, and as many people know, the COVID-19 pandemic that we all had to live through. With about 50% of our residents, 50% of our staff, also being residents, it meant this was we were affected on a personal level as well as a professional level, and a lot of our business as usual had to be put on hold for disaster recovery actions. I had my manager of strategic planning filling up a van with animals from the shelter to try and get them out of the flooding, so it was just really taking on duties that were outside of the normal scope. Given this, it was really important that we made sure that we were being more proactive instead of reactive. And so our approach was then to develop a suite of strategic documents. And over the last few years, we've developed a waste and resource recovery strategy, a sustainability strategy, a landfill management strategy, FOGO transition plan, and a climate change risk assessment and adaptation action plan, just to name a few. And so we did already know the importance of strategic direction to build capacity, but litter prevention wasn't part of our business as usual. In our waste and resource recovery strategy, we did have litter management actions, but not prevention. And so what we really needed to do was shift that focus. We got together, oops, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. What we did was we got together with different groups of council. So we had the resource recovery team, our strategic planning team, our waste management team. Sorry, the slide keeps flicking, it's a bit distracting. We also had our compliance team, our assets management team, all together in the room to talk about how could we address litter prevention, because we knew that it wasn't just for waste education. There were so many different aspects of council that would deal with that, and we needed to be working together to come up with a solution. And so what we did was we did form that group together, which slowly grew over time as we realised through engagement that actually there's a lot more sections of council that have to deal with this than we thought. You've got the customer service team, our governance team, our records team, and so it had a lot more areas that needed to be involved. What we did was we researched different opportunities for funding. So at this time, we actually didn't know about the grants when we first met together to discuss it, and then we discovered that there were these litter prevention grants that we could go for. There were 3 different streams, the stream 1 being the small on-the-ground projects, the stream 2 being the capacity building and strategic direction, and then the stream 3 being the own it and act implementation. So at first we actually thought that we would just go for a small on-the-ground project. We thought that we'd apply for the stream 1 grant. And what was great about the expression of interest process is it meant that you actually got to have collaboration with the EPA to make sure that your application was really what was suited to you. So you weren't just applying for what you thought was best, but you got to have that discussion. And so when we met with the EPA and we talked about what our aspirations were, and then there was also showing that cross-council commitment, they suggested that we should really go for a Stream 2 grant to build that strategic capacity. And so we went for a Stream 2 grant to develop a litter prevention plan, a roadmap, and a bin infrastructure business case. So we developed those 3 documents already, and I'll talk through them through the other slides. But last week, the litter prevention plan was just adopted by all our councillors at the council meeting. And we also applied for a Stream 3 grant for $400,000 and were awarded that. So that's really going to assist on the implementation of this project. And it also helps the councillors to know that action is going to start happening straight away because we've got the funds to do that. So I just want to talk quickly through this because this was part of the way that we worked more in a collaborative approach rather than just one officer. Because in the past, when we would have filled out something like this, which was part of the grant that you had to do this to understand what your capacity was and where there was room to grow, Usually we would just get one staff member to complete this, and it would be from the perspective of one person of where we were. But our consultant recommended that what we should actually do is get everybody that has anything to do with litter prevention in council to complete it. And then when the results came out, it was a reflection of where everyone felt we sat, not just one staff member or one team. And so where we did really well was our sharing and learning. And I think part of this is through the regional litter prevention plan that we've done with Wesrock and worked on with Wesrock and other councils. However, this is from the start, by the way, so this is before we developed any of the documents where we were. So our targets and actions and internal collaboration were okay, but where we really lacked was our track record, our ownership, support, our understanding and monitoring and evaluation, because we really didn't collect any data. Our external collaboration, vision, appetite were all sort of a bit lower. And I think even just through developing these strategic documents, these areas have all already increased because we now have a better understanding of litter as well, and that was through the research that we did throughout this project. So I'm not going to talk through all of the engagement because there was quite a lot, but what I want to talk through is more about the collaboration with other teams and the community to get effective engagement. And I'm going to talk about that through our failed engagement, really. So we did 3 surveys, which we sent to all of the schools, we sent to all of the businesses, and we sent to the councillors, and we actually didn't receive any results back from these surveys because they were all done through an email format. And so we could have, I guess, ticked a box and said we tried, but instead we wanted to make sure that we got that engagement because it was important. So we went out to the schools and did a workshop within the school. For the businesses, we utilised our economic development team and went out to a business breakfast at 7 in the morning and did a presentation at the Chambers of Commerce, and then got the businesses to do the survey afterwards. And with councillors as well, had a councillor briefing session so they could really ask questions about the project, and it was a bit more interactive. So we had to change the way that we were engaging because it just wasn't getting the results anymore. For our research and data as well, a lot of it was built on existing data as well, done through Wesrock and done through the New South Wales EPA. And so what we were focusing on more was what is the research and data gaps just for Hawkesbury specifically. One of the things we noticed is that we didn't have any information on our bin infrastructure. The assets team had a little bit of an audit that they had done in the past. Our waste contractor had an audit of some of the public place recycling bins, but we didn't really have a proper audit or have how many bins there were, where they were, what type of bins they were. And so we put those audits together and got our open spaces team to go out into the field and actually validate all that data. And also what was really important was what type of bins we had. And so that bin there is a bit newer in our town centre, and it's got the butt bin on there as well. But a lot of our old bins, I think there were 85 of them, which are these open cradle bins. They're like open, on the top there's no lid, and so litter can easily blow out of it, animals can get in and take litter out of it. And from an open spaces point of view, they have to like physically lift it out to empty it as well. So there's multiple issues with those bins. From our assets team point of view as well, they don't have an ongoing bin fund. It just happens reactively, really, or with grants. And so what would happen is they'd put a new bin in, but not factor the cost of the removal of the old cradle bin. So you'd end up sort of with double infrastructure and keeping all those open cradle bins in. So that was one of the main things that we identified, is that we need to get rid of those open cradle bins, and where there isn't another bin, then replace it with a better bin. So we came up with a bin standard within our bin infrastructure business case, but it also highlights all the different bins we have, where they are, and so that we can use that as we move forward in delivering on our plan. So this is the feedback from the surveys that we did out with communities. And so it was asking them what litter they found. So you'll see it's a bit of a mix of percentage. What this means is they were asked, what litter do you see in the community? And then given all options. So if it says 78%, it means 78% of people ticked that box. So they could tick multiple boxes. What's interesting in seeing these views is that what people put as what they see as litter isn't always the same as what we actually saw when we went out and started counting litter. Like, a lot of people are putting beverage containers, but we would maybe see one across all of our counts. So we were surprised that quite high percentages put beverage containers as what they see. And the council views is quite different in terms of the items compared to what everybody else was saying in their responses. When we actually went out into the field, we found that cigarette butts were the most littered item in the Hawkesbury, which surprised a lot of us because we really didn't notice that there were cigarette butts until now we know that there are. We see them everywhere. The other thing was balloons made up a large percentage in our recreational areas. And with a lot of our parks being near the river, this is quite problematic because that's going to the waterways. So some of the challenges of collaborating, our waste education officer role is a 0.4 full-time equivalent. Resourcing can be quite difficult, and like I mentioned, we have a large LGA but a small population, so you're not really having a huge amount of budget to deliver across that area. Another thing with collaboration is everybody has different opinions and different points of views, so that can make it really hard when you might have a priority and theirs are quite different to yours. But I think for collaboration, the key to that is understanding what their priorities are and seeing how there can be multiple benefits. And so with like the open cradle bins, for example, for us, we don't want the litter, but for them, they might not want the physical work of having to pull it out. And for the assets team, they want consistency or a consistent design that's cheaper. So it's understanding the benefits to them, and when we're telling them about it, actually marketing it in the way that benefits them. Even though we're doing it for litter, we know that that's not their priority, so we need to collaborate effectively, actually look at what they need. So with collaboration, we do this in many different ways. These are sort of my key points to why I think it's important and how to do it. I think it's important to engage everybody, not just the staff that are relevant or not just the organisations that are relevant. At our council, we have this initiative called 10 at 10. So it usually happens once a week or once a fortnight, where for 10 minutes at 10 a.m, somebody from the council will give a 10-minute presentation on a topic that's relevant to them. So at our council, we had Brendan from Wesrock, who's the Regional Litter Prevention Officer, come out and do a presentation on Reporter Tosser, and that was not to litter prevention staff, that was to all of the staff across the organisation. So then a lot of people were coming up afterwards saying, oh, I didn't know about the program, or I never knew you could do that. And so we're actually engaging staff, but also then enabling them when the community asks a question to know about these initiatives and know about these projects. Because often when staff are out in the field or when staff are at events, the community don't see them as whatever their specific role is, they see them as a council worker. And so they'll often get asked questions about anything. So having this sort of program where you're letting everybody know about the initiatives is great. I think reaching out as well, so even if there aren't grants available, reaching out to the New South Wales EPA, reaching out to other councils and asking about what it is that people do or how can we improve our processes. There's still a lot of learning and still a lot of things that can be done even when you don't have funds, but the funds definitely help. Having different formats as well. So like I mentioned, going out by a survey doesn't always work for everyone. Sometimes people really do need face-to-face. Okay, we spoke about that. Executive support is also really important. So if you are doing cross-council collaboration and working across multiple teams, you then have multiple managers and different directorates sometimes as well. So you want to gain their support because essentially it's their staff that you want to engage with. So you can scan the QR code if you'd like to view the litter prevention plan, but you can also type it in on Google and it would come up because it was at our council meeting last week. I'm not going to go through the plan because we just don't have enough time, but the key things about the plan is that we want to get the basics right at our council. Before this, we were just doing litter management and not prevention. So this is really about understanding how we are now going to be getting the basics of prevention right. We want to have a shared commitment, and that's not just between council, but with other councils, with the community, with businesses, and getting everybody on board, because sometimes that's more powerful when the community members are champions. And I think I watched one of the Good for the Hood, Joe Toronto presentations the other day, and she was saying how it's if somebody is engaged, you want to keep them engaged because otherwise they can end up being your enemy. So in the community, if there is somebody that's engaged, having a way to continue that excitement and that want to work with council. And then the last one is council litter prevention action. So us actually acting as leaders and setting an example. And that can be done in several ways. For us, even me and another staff member sometimes just go out and pick up litter in our lunch break. And I know that's management and not prevention, but the conversations you have with the community, even though they don't know that we're council staff, they will start giving you feedback and saying, oh, wow, I can't believe there's litter when there's bins right there. Or this, you're starting to get feedback even though you're not doing proper engagement. So moving forward, up here on the screen, these are just the ways that we're going to actually measure how we progress on our plan. And this is really data-driven, so it's understanding how we're getting to those targets, and that's all in our Hawkesbury City Council roadmap for litter prevention. I think one of the things that we were talking about the other day as well is that data doesn't always measure the connection, though, that you have with people and the connection. And internally, a lot of our collaboration has happened because of the connection with other staff members, and you can't always measure that. But how you do know it's successful is that people are doing the project and are working on it with you. And so other teams are willing to work on the project and deliver on it, even if it's outside their scope. Our compliance team actually set up an illegal dumping working group after this project because they saw how well it worked when we were working together. And so they then duplicated that into a different avenue so that we could work together on another thing. So the key learnings that I got is mostly that collaboration is key, that it's important to engage everyone, stepping outside of the business as usual, and I think that's where the innovation comes in when we're trying to think of something that's beyond a survey or trying to think of something that's beyond just cleaning up things. Trying new things falls into that as well. And then the research and the data. So previously we didn't have any data, so we didn't actually know what was in our community. And then you don't know what you're trying to target your messages at. And so understanding that cigarette butts is one of the most littered items in our LGA, that data then supports what we're saying to the community as well, because we were putting up Facebook posts about cigarette butts as part of a Reporter Tosser campaign with Wesrock, and a lot of the comments were saying, oh, nobody smokes anymore, or there aren't any cigarette butts, and we can then say, well, actually, when we go out in the field and count, cigarette butts the most littered item in the Hawkesbury. So that data then supports the messaging that we're also doing in the community. Thank you.
Our last speaker, and that's the last one of the day. Oh, you've got one more next door, that's right. Okay. Our next speaker is Lisa Roach. Lisa is an illegal dumping prevention officer at Canterbury Bankstown Council and has been working in illegal dumping and waste space for the past 13 years. CB City, that's the new way they talk about it now, looks at empowering its residents with education and engagement first, then enforcement. Lisa is known for setting high standards and benchmarks for others to follow. Lisa works collaboratively across teams to get the best results for the community and council. And there's something else about Lisa you might know. The following is a citation from the Hockey Australia Hall of Fame, and there are about 20 or 23 members of the Coaches and Umpires Hockey Hall of Fame. And it starts, Lisa Roach, New South Wales. Starting in 2000, Lisa Roach umpired at the highest level for 14 years. Lisa has umpired at 2 Olympic Games, 2 World Cups, 6 Champions trophies, including the gold medal match at the London Olympics in 2012, the 2010 World Cup final, and the 2011 Indoor World Cup final. Having received her golden whistle for 100 international games in 2011, Lisa went on to umpire 135 international matches. Her calm, no-nonsense approach strong presentation and confidence is aspired to by many umpires, not only in Australia, but internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Rach.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Ron, for embarrassing me. That's much appreciated. I've actually known Ron for a long time, actually probably since I was about 14, and he could probably actually tell you some really bad other stories about me in my youth. So if you ever want to know about what I've done in my youth, I know Ron and his wife very well. Today I'm actually delivering a presentation on using surveillance and how we've been using it in council. I'll be sharing with you some of the stuff that we've done and the learnings from surveillance to tackle litter and illegal dumping. But firstly, get up. I don't know about you, but sitting on those things gives me the sorest ass. I think it's gone flat from 3 days of actually sitting on it. So do a bit of a wiggle around, do a bit of a kick, do a bit of a stretch. Because it's those things are driving me nuts. Right. Lisa in the wild. Look, we've been using surveillance to better understand what the behaviour is and who has been doing it and how we can change it. What we learn guides us in how we design and tweak our education and prevention programs. So, what is surveillance? Chuck up your hands. What's surveillance? Give me a couple of words. All right, so the definition of actually surveillance is to closely observe or to watch. So that's what we've actually done in these 3 case studies that I'm going to give you today. So the ultimate goal for us is actually like a clean city. Surveillance is supporting this goal. We still have a bit of a way to go, but we've actually had quite a few wins. Today I'll walk you through 3 scenarios where we've used surveillance for successful dumping and litter reduction. I've got one which is a commercial dumping in street litter bins in 2 of our town centres, and also a bird feeding and litter in our parks, and another one which is residential dumping into our park bins. Our first case study looks at commercial dumping in and around street bins in our town centres. Our night cleansing crews were actually reporting that they were finding business waste dumps in and around our street bins in our town centres. Handling uncontainerised business waste on their runs was inefficient and unsafe. The volume of business waste that we were removing was estimated to cost us about $140,000 per year to tip. Our internal illegal dumping working group developed a plan to tackle this issue with our Clean City approach. We chose 2 town centres, one in an area called Punchbowl and another one in an area called Saigon Plaza in Bankstown. We began this project in February 2024, and we started just with photos from our cleansing crews, and we also did an audit of the contents of the street bins in Punchbowl. We also did some visual audits of bins on foot and at different times over a 2-week period. More Lisa in the wild. I'm the big blue smurf at Canterbury Bankstown Council who runs around all day long. We've got a couple of Smurfs. We're going to get some more Smurfs, but anyway, we're the only ones that wear the blue, and so we're proudly actually Canterbury Bulldogs supporters too, by the way. So we do a lot of work with them. There was an increased council officer present in these town centres, and we did a lot of engagement face-to-face through printed, translated flyers, simple sort of action-focused language and relatable images, and touring with all of the businesses in those areas. A few examples of them up there as well. We've made sure business had adequate trade waste services, correct bin sizes and service frequencies for their business. The regulatory services team hand-delivered some waste in public place guidelines to the businesses and did daily walkthroughs of the town centre and late-night inspections, increasing visibility, and they were doing on-site surveillance. On-site foot surveillance. Data from the audits and patrols gave us intel around the most problematic bins and where to put the cameras. We used trail cameras, which sometimes we mounted them inside shops where business owners were keen to assist, and we also put them up on some council assets. We also installed a Spectre dual CCTV solar camera in Saigon Plaza. It's just some images of the stuff that we were seeing around the bins and who was bringing them there. The majority of businesses did actually want a clean area and know that that cleanliness attracts more customers. Some business actually were dobbing people in and gave us intel on who we needed to actually go and investigate and to stop the unsafe. And we also had a lot of dumping, and we also had some illegal trading behaviour around our area too. We've got a very eclectic socio-economical sort of clientele that work around this place, and this lady here is effectively known as the Pineapple Lady. She was doing all sort of illegal trading on footpaths, leaving absolute piles of mess. We did a very big recon on her through our regulatory guys did a lot of trailing her to actually see where she lived, because every time we actually did find or locate her, no English, a few other bits and pieces, or she'd do a runner into a nearby casino that we've got in our area and spend all the money there all day. Anyway, that's a story for another day. We managed to locate a number of serial offenders with some footage from our cameras and evidence on dump materials linked back to some of the shops. This led us to way better engagement actually with their staff. So we were engaging with some of the shops, but they weren't actually passing this material on to their staff. So we then actually went back and actually spoke to staff members about this as well, taking our translated material with us when we did that. This also sort of shed light on some of the lack of storage for our business bins in our town centres and our waste in public place, particularly laneway bin presentation and bin use, are key focuses for our regulatory services team. We did place up, I think you can see down the bottom underneath the SULO there, we actually did place bin stickers on all our bins with business names, phone numbers, waste collector, the day, time of collection, which was sort of clearly marked on it for us to actually then take action off if the bins were open or if they were overflowing or out for too long. So results. I haven't actually got any videos from these particular ones because some of our videos are actually still going through sort of legal and regulatory sort of things at the moment. So in a few of the other slides, I've actually got some videos that will actually roll through. But this is one of the cameras that we actually were using. It's actually become a nice seat in the area as well. They actually guys sit around it all day long, which is quite funny. So people sit underneath it. I can sit at my desk and actually watch people, walking around underneath this one. But we've seen actually big improvements in behavioural change. We did do about 24 different enforcement actions, all the way through from warnings to pins, which have been issued against businesses for illegal dumping, littering, as well as illegal street trading. Pre and post intervention audits shows a halving of commercial dumping by weight, with an average reduction of 10 kilos down to 5 kilos in and around the public street litter bins, as well as improving town centres with their cleanliness and servicing. Since we've actually done this, we're actually starting to roll this out into other town centres too, because we've had such a good buy-in and reduction in these areas. All right, case study 2. This is sort of illegal dumping in some of our park bins. This trial sort of focused on illegal dumping in park bins. The target hotspot was identified by our cleansing team again. We had issues including dumping of bag waste, uncontainerised material, dumped in and around the bins, and we were frequently over-servicing these bins. We had 3 240-litre bins, and they were getting serviced 2 or 3 times a week, which is way too much for us, okay? Clempton Park, where this actual bin is a heavily used park. Lots of park used by schools, sporting associations and all that, but the sporting bodies actually have their own bins, so these are still being used by other persons. So when it's cricket and there's footy, there's all that going on there on the weekends. It's mostly used by school student, family and dog walkers. The street is a really busy one. This is a thoroughfare through to a industrial area, and also one of our largest mosques in our area is located sort of up the road. Surveillance and intervention began in this area in August 2024. We were using Reconyx cameras. I don't know if anybody's, look, I'm a bit of a camera geek. Sorry, I'm going to talk sort of the actual cameras that we use, but my favourites is the Reconyx and also another one called an iGotcha one. iGotcha camera has a little solar panel on the top of it, so we were using the Reconyx one to actually show number plates of vehicles or a little bit more definition of cars that were actually coming into the area, and the iGotcha one gave us a wider view for context about what was actually going on. IT. We went through this yesterday and it was working. Huh? Nope, videos. Have you got the one from yesterday? It says embedded video.
Lisa, were you also a video ref?
Yes, I was a video ref. I can't get the video to work. This is actually supposed to be a video. This was actually showing... Untrustworthy Canterbury Bankstown Council. I actually went through this. We've got 6 embedded videos in this. Are actually the most important part of the presentation because they actually showed what was actually going on at these sites. But I can give you a bit of a context instead of just looking at a black screen there. Dan, any luck? Hang on one second.
No, don't. I see the dance, don't
I can't do cartwheels and I can't do forward rolls, so yeah, sorry. I'm so sorry about this, guys. Hey. All right, this guy isn't headless. He's actually just blurred out for purposes of the video. But in this footage, this is the type of behaviour that we actually experienced while we're there. This particular guy, he's filling the bins up with bagged rubbish from his car. He's seen going back and forward about 3 times. This guy was actually fined for dumping. We put up motion censored lights with signs underneath them. He even stops and actually looks up at them. Thank you. Gotcha. So this is the type of the behaviour that we were actually finding. People were driving to the park, putting in bag waste or large items in around the bins that were close by the roadside. Our education enforcement strategy was based on the surveillance intel. We letterbox dropped surrounding residents, about 150 houses, I think, were around there. Some local residents contacted council to discuss what they had seen. Bins were stickered up with regulatory notices. Additional signage was installed with motion-censored solar lighting set up to trigger as people approached the bin. You're going to just flop it to the next one. Yep. He's not headless too, by the way, sorry. Blurred out for reasons. Where am I up to? When we issued warning notices or warning letters to these people that we did see coming to the bin, we managed to sort of pop in sort of additional waste service forms so they could get their extra bins for their services for their home if they needed more space, and where to find the forms online. In the first month, we only issued warnings. And we issued 12 warnings in this time. Once we installed the cameras in the second month, we issued 10 fines. This video here actually captures a couple driving up to the park at night time. They actually have a look at the signs and they actually drive off. So we actually wanted to show you something about that it worked. People not doing what we wanted to do. Actually read the sign, got back in the car and drove off. This is exactly the behaviour we wanted to see, and so it did work in the end. We actually captured quite a few of these people, like actually getting out of their car, walking up, the light comes on, they see the sign and they go, oh, shit, back in the car and drive off. So it wasn't the only one that we saw. We saw multiple people do this, so we thought, well, actually it's working, even though it gave us a really good insight about where to get it. And then we actually found out that they were coming further afield than when we actually did the litter box drop for. And when we did get back in contact with them, some of them did actually get extra bins for their homes or then found out where to take it to, a tip or a waste facility. So as a result of these interventions, the improvements that we did see improvements in behavioural change and servicing requirements. Dumping had been reduced effectively, so we were able to take away one bin. Then we moved the bins further into the park, away from the road, and we've only got two 240-litre bins there, and they're only serviced once a week. So we've actually managed to do that by, what's that, 60%. Some of our waste cleansing guys who actually service this said, like catching offenders or actually warning offenders and reducing the dumping behaviour really helps them actually keep their team motivated, because they were actually the ones that were actually reporting this and coming back to us and actually seeing the action sort of led to them actually reporting more bins where this was happening too. So we've started to roll this out in other sites where we've actually had issues with over-servicing of bins. Community is happy because the bins are nicer there and the park is actually way cleaner now that we've actually moved the bins and we've got no dumping around them. Since, I think it is, sorry, I'm just looking for my spot. Since the end of December 2024, we've actually had no illegal dumping around these bins. So we've managed to actually reduce the illegal dumping around the bins to 100%. Case study 3. It's one of my favourites, this one. Bird feeding. So we actually also used our cameras to actually observe and see what was going on with some bird feeding issues that we were having in a few of our parks. So this particular one is at Cantrell Reserve. It's a smallish park on a corner block in a residential area. It's got a children's playground and seating. Family use the playgrounds, has a small pergola for picnics and other bench seating. The park furniture is well maintained and mown frequently. The area is mostly single unit dwellings around the area, surrounding it, and West Yagoona Shopping Centre is about sort of 150, 200 metres up the road. It did have a bit of a history of like some dumping behaviour, but we'd only received a few complaints. But this actually became a hotspot from a councillor complaint. The councillor was contacted by concerned residents, complaining daily about the volume and frequency of bird feeding and the mess the birds were causing. Surrounding residents also complained that they had seen pigeon, ibis, rats, cats, etc. at night. So we investigated to see what we could do in this park. So at the beginning we put up a lot of signs, but they got stolen. But we replaced them all before we began surveillance. So we put up more signs. And we placed more signs up in the park. Benches were pressure washed. The park was mown. We did a massive litter pick in the area in October 2024. We still no behavioural change. Nothing changed. So then we began the surveillance in November 2024. Our education strategy in the park was guided by surveillance intel. So we installed 2 cameras. Once again, one a Reconyx camera, which actually gave us sort of like, we could actually sort of specifically see what was going on. So if we needed to actually view number plates or cars or anything like that. And then we had the iGotcha one, which has given us the wider view to give us context about what was going on. Signage was also installed at numerous points in the park, as close to the bird feeding behaviour as we could possibly get. Under surveillance notices were installed. We had a couple of signs put up, sorry, I'll just throw to the next one. some of the signage was we put up like the bread is harmful to birds' health, which we ended up having to sort of change because we'd catch people dumping in the park or feeding birds in the park and they're going, I'm not feeding them bread. So we actually changed to food scraps are harmful to the health of birds, which was more broad of feeders that were in the area. We also had officers engaged face-to-face with park users and neighbours, went out on patrol, and we also did quite a lot of like on-foot surveillance, like face-to-face surveillance around the park as well. We reworked an existing anti-bird feeding letter to meet regulatory standards, including all the new litter regulations. Our rangers letterbox dropped to about 60 houses around this particular park. Right, so this is the type of behaviour that we were seeing. He's not headless again, by the way. Typical behaviour we found in the park and saw in this park. Drive by, flinging foods at the birds. There's two views from this one, so this is the more context one. Sometimes they knew he was coming. When people were coming here and feeding these birds, they were not spending a lot of time actually interacting with birds. We found that there really wasn't a lot of interaction with birds or when they actually fed the birds. This is our bird flinger. Didn't even slow down. Same man. This guy was a serial offender, okay? That's hence why he's actually he's blocked out and blurred in this. He just actually kept driving down the road. He'd drive on the other side of the road, chuck his food and the container out of his car window and keep driving. When we actually got in contact with this guy, he was like, but I like to feed the birds, I said, well, why don't you do it in your own backyard? Too dirty, too smelly. That's exactly why we don't want you to do it here. Okay, so he was fined for littering because he had actually already been warned numerous times. We had a couple of sneaky Petes, so if you can actually see up there, I think some red circles come as well, some sneaky Petes that come in and sort of waits till the coast is clear, gets out, feeds the birds, leaves a lot of food. A little bit of interaction with the birds, but it's actually not much. It's a bit closer, so you can actually see him a little bit better. Yeah, so look, we've actually seen some improvements in behavioural change in the area. Sort of finding some of the key offenders has reduced feeding overall, but there is still some feeding occurring. The birds aren't as hanging around so much. There's a visible reduction in droppings and foulings that are actually happening in this place because we actually got a lot of people complaining, the surrounding residents were complaining that they were getting bird poop on the car and all over the place in their backyards and in that surrounding area. Our corflute signs have actually been removed and damaged at different times of the project, and we actually had 2 cameras stolen. So sometimes best efforts get thwarted. But anyway, we did actually have them replaced. A metal sign has now been installed in the park as a more permanent solution. The councillors are happy, the residents were more happy we were taking action and that we did locate some really key offenders. They thanked us so far. So in this area, we actually issued 9 warnings. As we said, one person was a serial offender and we had one fine for littering. That's actually increased a little bit since we actually put this together, but it's pretty close to that anyway. So the key learnings from this, as I said before, when we actually went out and actually spoke to these people about the behaviour that they were doing, we actually issued them warnings and they got back in contact with us and we sort of said, well, why are you going to the parks and feeding all the birds and you're not even hanging around? Exactly the same thing as I said before. I don't want my backyard messed up. I don't want bird poop everywhere. I don't want all the, the rats and all of the other vermin attracted to it. And I said, guys, that's exactly why we don't want you to do it here either. All right, it's exactly the same thing. This is a nice amenity that we want people to use. Children and all that could not use some of this play equipment because it got fouled on by so many birds. So we spent a lot of time having to clean up because of the extra fouling that was happening. And birds actually thrive by actually foraging for themselves. So that's some of the key findings that we found. Yeah, so surveillance gives us powerful insights into what people are doing and why, so we can fine-tune our efforts to reduce litter and dumping behaviours and shift social norms in a positive way. Plus, it gives us solid evidence we need to back up enforcement. Our ultimate goal is a clean city, and we are well on our way. But we can only get there by working together as one big team. So thanks so much for listening. I hope you've got a few useful takeaways from this today, and you've got some different ways you can actually use cameras for. And if anybody anytime needs any tips about cameras and how to use them, please get in contact with me. I'm happy to share info. And I think I've got thank you, but I've got a bit of for the camera geeks out there, a couple of different sort of views from some of our cameras that we've got in case anyone is interested. Once again, sorry, we have to blur out the number plates for this because it's being shared worldwide. We could actually clearly read the number plates on those. So that's a Reconyx one that we use for actually the sort of the number plate definition, so we can actually find out who it was. And the one down the bottom is our iGotcha solar camera, which gives us, a really large view down the street. It's probably about 300 metres that we could actually see down there, 250, 300 metres. And our lovely one, our big beast that we use, it's just another big blue version of me, to be quite honest, is got two dual, so we've got a big solar panel on the top, two dual cameras, and this one is actually mobile. We can actually move this around, and it never runs out of battery. It's fine. It's awesome. Best camera we've ever got. You could, if you actually zoomed in on these number plates and all that, you could see them with absolutely fine definition. So that's me. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ron, for embarrassing the hell out of me. Much appreciated.
Yes, thank you. No, we have known each other for a long time, and it's great to see someone you've known as a younger person and grow into, doing this sort of stuff. It's a great feeling for both of us. Okay, that's it. Look, first of all, I'd like to thank all the presenters. I thought they were fantastic. I hope you did too. So, round of applause, please. Now, is anyone following it? Are there any questions on the website? I can't see any. Let's have a look. Alerts. No, not there. Program. I can't. Anyone got any questions? Okay, righto, come on, people, up you come. Up here.
Oh, it's just,
Sam,
I don't think we've got much
Charlotte.
time, but for Lisa,
Up there, please, Lisa, Charlotte, and Sam and Rupert, if you can come up here for questions, please.
we have massive issue with a regional transfer station that's unmanned that just gets absolutely abused the bejesus out of. In Snowman area, I'm Sophie, we've got a regional transfer station that gets abused, and we've had cameras shot out of trees. I won't tell you where I'm from. But have you ever had to disguise, and you're in camera geek land, have you ever had to disguise any of them? Have you had to go that far?
I'm pretty good at hiding them up trees and in things, to be quite honest. I haven't had any yet, but there's ghillie tape and all that type of stuff, and there's spray paint that you can get these days to disguise them. Get cameras to look at cameras. You can get cameras to actually look at cameras. The big tall ones that we've got, we've had no issues with those. The ones that we have actually stolen or go missing are our small trail cameras. They're quite cheap to replace, but our big ones, which are 20 grand, or not that much, 15 grand, we haven't had any issues with those yet. If you need some disguising techniques, I can give you some tips on that, but maybe I could do that on another day.
For you here, I think. I'll reach out. Thanks.
Yeah, just reach out.
Look, just something that I was saying to Sam last night. When I was an altar boy, yes, a long time ago, the priest, I don't remember much, but the priest once said there are three types of parents: those that know how to bring up their children, those that don't know, and those that don't care. So this is probably for Rupert, like the ones who know, the ones who don't know, okay, maybe you can educate them, but how do you turn the ones who don't care? They just don't give a shit. You know what I mean?
You're not talking about your own kids, are you? No, your kids are wonderful.
Yeah.
I guess when we did those segments, it was interesting. There was sort of a 1.9%, 2% of people that were we deemed at this stage, they were almost too hard to reach given the resistance. And so sometimes you've got to make a strategic choice about who you target. I think the role of the programs and education over time is you do get a little bit of social norming. So if you can start with some of those ones that are more open to change, you set those norms. Otherwise, you've got to find them.
Yeah, it's so strange. Sam?
Full disclosure, I used to work in the team that Lisa is in, but...
Margot?
Yeah, Margot, I'm at Hunters Hill Council. Just very curious, when you had your people getting out the car and looking at the signage, hopping quickly back in the car and zooming off, were you looking at some of those surrounding town centres or the next closest park to see, like even if cameras weren't there, but anecdotally was rubbish generation going up where they just kind of went to the next park or the next bin
We
they
never
could
found
find?
any evidence of that. Once we did actually get in contact with a few persons that either had been warned or had been fined, they actually bothered to find out where a waste transfer station was or a tip, or they actually bought into actually getting additional bins. So we did find that we actually changed their behaviour to actually do the right thing.
Best outcome, yep.
Yeah.
That's what you
We
want.
did supply them a photograph of them, what they were doing. Like when we actually gave them the letters, so we actually said, said a warning here, don't do it, with a photo of them actually with the behaviour that we didn't want to see, and they went back saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to do, and I got a bin, and we actually did see them actually get additional bins.
Sam from Hawkesbury. I'd just be interested to know whether you actually publicise, we talk about legal dumping and councillors often ask us and the public asks us, has anyone been fined, etc., etc. Have you publicised those that have been fined and that kind of thing in the community to sort of say, well, we don't just take photos and send you warning letters?
Yeah, not so much around these 3 trials that we did in the case studies, but we are releasing these case studies as well. They'll probably be up on our own social media platforms soon. But we do have some fantastic comms people who love putting videos and photos of illegal dumping and littering stuff out. They're very passionate about actually helping the community with that. So we do, and we probably don't do enough. Everybody, I think, can probably do a little bit better, but we actually have to be very careful because sometimes the legality of actually putting out comms with, but yes, we do, and we have. Not for this particular one, but for others, yes, we do, and we do a lot.
Thank you.
This is probably more for Charlotte. Number one littering item being cigarette butts. I work for National Parks and no smoking, but we get butts everywhere all the time. And I didn't know until recently that they take about 10 years to break down, and you don't want them there in the first place. They're plastic. Did you come up with any solutions or any ways of targeting that particular identified item?
So that's sort of part of the next part is now implementing our plan. But one of the things we have noticed is that down the main street, all of the bins now have cigarette butt bins. And we haven't done our next counts yet, but even just from walking down the street, the butts are still being put on the ground next to the bin, even though there's the dedicated bins there. And I mean, Rupert might be able to answer more from the behaviour change side of things.
Yes, I'll try and keep it short, but we did run a very long trial in cigarette butt behaviour change programs, and the solution that worked the best was giving smokers a place to smoke, unfortunately. If you give them a place to smoke, you build that connection with them, you build the social compact, and they respond accordingly. If you shun them away and you push them away and you put up no smoking here, they'll find a place to smoke and they'll respond. So it is about connecting with them. That was the most successful strategy. We tried enforcement, we tried social norming, we tried a whole range of other strategies. But when we gave smokers a place, then they responded accordingly. All that research is up on our website. We are, through the grant program, working with National Parks. I don't know if you're familiar, we're developing a strategy. Oh, yeah, very good, hello. We'll talk after. And so I think when you have places where you have no smoking, it's thinking about, rather than just say no smoking, if you can create a space or before they go into parks, this is your last chance, I don't know, but it's a tricky one.
We're not allowed to put smoking bins in car parks because it's no smoking. I've got one more question, Rupert. You're talking about a meeting that you you cut off because you're being recorded. What was that meeting about?
I don't know, are we still being recorded? I'll talk to you after.
Okay, look, unfortunately, we've gone well and truly over time, and I have to wrap up. But it doesn't mean you can't sit around and talk to each other out at coffee and cake and all that. And also, don't forget 4 o'clock, Costa, I think, is next door with What If, What Next. So there's plenty of things to do. And look, thanks for being here today. I know it's the last, session, but I think they're a great panel, and that's just really nice to have people who can share a bit of a laugh and share a bit of their own lives. And I'm really appreciative to all of you for being here.